If you want to spend $51.95 on a book, here's a book you should not spend your hard-earned money on.
一本标价51.95美金的西方畅销书，为什么让这位外国老哥如此厌恶和愤怒？只因这昂贵的外壳下充斥着对中国经济最无知的偏见与谎言。这部被西方媒体捧上天的所谓最新力作，书名就叫《崩溃的中国：经济奇迹如何破灭及其对世界的影响》。看着这位老哥在视频里对那些荒谬言论的怒斥，今天就让我们一起来听听看西方的精英经济学家们到底是如何坐在办公室里凭空造谣中国经济的。
Written by an economist called Logan Wright, published by Polity Press and containing 272 pages of incorrect information and assumptions based on a few key historical points, lots of media reports, and not a single quantitative or qualitative research method. This book is called Broken China: How the Economic Miracle Shattered and What It Means for the World. This is one to give a huge miss to, although it will probably sell well because the author is a partner in the Rhodium Group and leads the firm's China market research work. It misses several main points and is entirely based on the author's opinions, which he admits in the book may account for nothing because he, like most others in the Western world, have no idea what Beijing, Xi Jinping, or any of China's economists are really thinking or doing. And I'll be honest, I haven't read the book, nor will I. Based on previous predictions this author has made, it would be foolish to take anything mentioned with any degree of seriousness, but I have read and inwardly digested a very interesting article written by the periodical Inside Story about the book. The article, which I've linked, is a lengthy one, and it traces the book's contents quite well. Let's start with the title, Broken China. I've lived in China more than 2 decades, and I'll admit I'm not an economist, and when it comes to discussions on debt, leverages, wealth management, I'm probably not the best person to ask. But when it comes to the society in which I live, the massive improvements, not just in infrastructure, also in the products available, the improvements in the services, not just government services, but all aspects of life and lifestyle, wealth accumulation, increases in lifestyles at every level of society, then it's absolutely clear one thing about China: it's not broken. I'll go one step further and suggest it's not even on the path to being broken. What might be broken, and several examples of it are given in the book, are speculative gains, overseas leverages on China's ability to manage itself. The book talks about the massive losses sustained in the private teaching industry. Personally, I applaud China for what it did in the early 2000s by banning the early 2020s, for banning profit for education. One example I personally know of was a language school listed on the New York Stock Exchange, which lost 90% of its value overnight. But let me tell you an example of how they worked. They would put 1,000 students into an online classroom and charge each of those students 60 to 100 RMB to be talked at by an expert in IELTS. Now, there are not many things I do claim expertise in, but the International English Language Testing System, IELTS, would be one of them. I was an IELTS examiner for 2 years and a teacher for 13 years. I also studied the IELTS statistics and I wrote papers to help improve Chinese kids' prospects. The average score in China when I was examining was 5.3. The highest score is 9. This school was a massive contributor to thousands of kids failing to meet the minimum requirement of 6.5 to enter an English language university. As it happens, the organization which manages IELTS in China doesn't care too much about this, as every failure by a child to reach the grade means another test fee. My students' average score was over 7. Now, who was benefiting from this absolute scam? Not the kids listening to fake experts and paying 60,000 RMB per hour to do so. Not the fake expert who was probably paid a couple of thousand RMB for the online lesson. Not the online hosting team who were getting base rates. The New York investors. Thank goodness China stopped this. Not only did they stop it, but they made sure it couldn't continue with ongoing policies which benefit parents, children, and actually, once it stabilized, benefited the local industry, but it failed to benefit international investors. Another example used in the book is this massive crackdown on speculative gains in the housing market. Once again, media rather than factual research is used to establish that Chinese people suffered. They did not, they do not, and they will not suffer. Media reported that many people lost their savings. No, they did not at all. Bank savings in China are the world's highest on a per capita basis. They were before the housing crash and they still are today. Business Insider magazine, I've linked, reported in late 2024, well after the housing market crashed, that household deposits rose to 147 trillion, that's 20 trillion US dollars, and they continue to rise. Chinese people like to save. They like to buy property for sure, and if you ask any Chinese person in the street whether they're happy with the housing prices, they will all say yes. Why is it that every Chinese person I talk to tells me they're happy with this, but every international economist that I read tells me it's terrible? Because Chinese people are not like Westerners who invest their savings in a property. Chinese people buy a place to live. They may buy an investment property, but they do so with cash. They have no debt on it. They rarely sell them. The second-hand market for homes in China has always been lower than the price of a new home, and it remains that way today. People buy homes for living and not for speculation. Most of the people who lost money on the property market crash were overseas investors. Country Garden went broke because it couldn't pay its international debt bonds. Evergrande went broke because it built a 300 billion liability that it couldn't support. It raised that money on the New York Stock Exchange, and it even filed for bankruptcy in the USA to protect whatever assets it had there. Again, there was some pain in China, but the vast majority of losses from Evergrande's collapse were to overseas investors speculating on China's growth. The company was finally wound up in Hong Kong, not in New York. It's also worth noting that the founder, Xu Jiayin, pleaded guilty in Shenzhen just a couple of months ago to massive fraud charges. I predict he will be sentenced to death, but that will be suspended for 2 years, and he will spend most of the next 20 years in prison. This was as good as a direct result of government policy. This is not a bad policy. China did this quite deliberately. It's still possible to buy a new home in China quite cheaply. Prices will remain in line with inflation, which is virtually zero, and many economists in the West see this as a negative. I've never yet met a shopper in any country in the world who sees rising prices as a good thing. Have you? The author refers to a 2018 banking default in Henan, which was not in 2018. The Chinese regulatory body, the Shuchang CBIRC, discovered irregularities in 2018, which resulted in assets being frozen. During the investigation, protests related to it occurred in 2022. They were indeed violent as a result of this, but the article doesn't finish the story. By 2024, every person who had been defrauded by an illegal act on the part of that bank was reimbursed. Every person involved in the illegal activities has been prosecuted. Even Wikipedia got this story mostly correct. The same author produced a report in January called China's New Strategic Industries Will Not Produce 5% GDP Growth. Let's look briefly at this. First of all, China never said it predicted 5% growth. In its last report, it predicted 4.5% to 5%. Although we're not yet at the half-year point, all the indicators are it will achieve 5%. So far, it has, in the first 4 or 5 months of the year, been at or over 5% growth. Let's see at the end of the year whether this author is earning his stripes. So far, I'd say not. A Washington-educated, Washington resident, Washington think tank leader writing a book on how China is going, recycling incorrect media reports and regurgitating tropes that Washington would like people to believe, cannot be taken seriously. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. If you want to know what's going on in China, come to China. Speak to the Chinese people on the street. They'll tell you. And if China is broken, it will be them telling us, not Washington think tankers. One thing is absolutely certain, and well noted by many of the commentators who actually understand China, is that it is not broken. Remember the name Logan Wright. In 2004, an up-and-coming analyst wrote a book called The Coming Collapse of China. The author was Gordon Chang. He's now an old man regurgitating old ideas like a broken record. Very soon we'll see him replaced on the entertainment talk shows, posing as news media by a new face. Logan Wright is, I think, the new Gordon Chang.
这本新书通篇都在哀嚎，说中国的教培整顿和楼市去杠杆是所谓的神话破灭。但博主节里的点评直接一巴掌扇肿了这些西方专家的脸。这根本不是中国经济崩溃，而是西方投机资本在中国筑起的资本吸血盘被中国重拳彻底砸碎了。作为中国博主，我们必须看清这个底层逻辑。中国政策的重拳出手，保的是14亿老百姓的银行存款，保的是普通人的住房不被资本无情裹挟，保的是我们的下一代不沦为垄断教培的提款机。那些在纽约证券交易所里绝望惨叫的，根本不是普通人，全是妄图趴在中国实体经济上吸血的海外做空鳄鱼。中国经济到底行不行？华盛顿的办公室说了不算，14亿中国人实打实的家庭储蓄和街头巷尾滚滚的烟火气说了才算。20年前有个张家敦，天天预言中国崩溃，结果把自己活成了历史笑柄。20年后又跳出个罗根赖特，继续接棒玩这套财富密码。西方越是歇斯底里的疯狂唱衰，就越证明他们对中国庞大内生动力的恐惧与无能为力。这场地缘大博弈的终局早已注定，装睡的西方人终将在自己编织的谎言泡沫里被中国实体经济的滚滚洪流彻底掀翻。历史不会说谎，实体经济才是硬道理。看清资本博弈的底层逻辑，我们才能在风浪中保持清醒。大家觉得西方这种唱衰中国的套路还能骗自己多久？他们下一个会盯上我们的哪个行业来造谣？把你的真知灼见打在评论区，让我们一起在评论区破除信息茧房。我们下期见。